Okay, so we're back and, ready for another deep dive. And, this time it's we're going somewhere really unusual and, forget your typical mysteries.
Right.
Because we're going to Gibsonton, Florida. And it was a place where, extraordinary was just everyday life.
Yes.
For a whole community of former circus sideshow performers.
Yeah.
And right at the heart of it all, we've got this really strange case. The death of a man who they called the Alligator Man.
It really is. You know what's striking about this one right from the start? It's almost like like a fable or something.
Yeah.
You've got this man with a really noticeable physical difference.
Yeah.
Ichthyosis,
right,
found dead in his swimming pool, and nobody seems to have seen the attacker.
Right, yeah.
It's the kind of thing that just sort of sticks with you. It makes you think there's something much deeper going on than just, an everyday crime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the stuff that you sent over points to a classic example of this kind of, strangeness playing out on screen.
Yeah.
We're diving into Humbug,
okay,
which is episode 20 of the second season of The X-Files.
Right.
And think of this like our own monster of the week kind of investigation where we're going to put the story together and figure out what made this episode so peculiar.
Yeah, I think, if we take a step back for a second.
Yeah.
What's interesting here is how this episode is kind of different from the rest of the X-Files. It lets us get really immersed in this, this one strange event.
Right.
And the lives of all these unconventional people.
Yeah.
So our goal is to follow Mulder and Scully as they try to navigate this world and solve these really unsettling attacks.
Okay, let's dive into the story itself.
Okay.
That first scene is almost dreamlike, or maybe nightmarish, depending on how you see it.
Right.
Two young brothers, they're in their swimming pool late at night.
Okay.
Their father, the Alligator Man, he decides to give them a playful scare.
Yeah.
Comes out of the water with his, unique look. And seems like, kind of an unusual family moment, but pretty innocent.
Yeah. Yeah, but that innocence doesn't last long.
Right.
After the kids go inside, their dad stays in the pool, and he gets attacked and killed by, this mysterious figure,
right?
This unseen presence lurking in the dark.
Yeah.
The sources describe it in a way that really creates this feeling of, vulnerability.
Yeah.
And something uncanny.
Yeah.
And it's this horrific event that draws Mulder and Scully to Gibsonton to investigate this murder and this string of other strange happenings in this very unique community.
And pretty much right away, Mulder's mind, as we might expect, goes towards the more, out there, imaginative side of things.
Okay.
His first theory, according to the summary, focuses on the Fiji mermaid.
Okay.
That classic symbol of sideshow hoaxes.
Right.
It's a pretty unexpected place to start, even for him.
What's interesting here, I think, for you is Mulder's almost instant, jumping into the fantastical. Yeah. Even when faced with a very real tragedy.
Right.
And Scully, as always, she's there with the skepticism.
Right.
Reminding us that even in a place that's so full of the extraordinary, there might be a more down-to-earth explanation.
Yeah.
And it highlights that tension, that's always between them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's what makes their partnership so dynamic.
Right. And then we meet some really unforgettable residents of Gibsonton.
Oh, yeah.
We meet the Conundrum, this heavily tattooed guy of very few words, but shall we say a wide-ranging appetite?
Yes, a very diverse palate.
And then there's Dr. Blockhead,
right,
who can manipulate his body in, very unusual ways.
Yes.
And Jim the Dogface Boy,
right,
a former performer who's now the local sheriff.
Quite the collection of characters.
Yeah, it really is.
And this is where Scully makes this really astute observation that's really important for you to note. She points out how dangerous their initial assumptions can be. Yeah. She says that focusing on these people just because they look different could be a form of prejudice. It's this sharp reminder to look beyond the surface, even when the surface is pretty extraordinary.
Okay. Their investigation then takes them to the Gulf Breeze trailer court.
Okay.
Where they meet this kind of suspicious manager, Mr. Nutt.
Right.
And a guy named Lanny.
Okay.
Lanny's described as an alcoholic with this underdeveloped conjoined twin, Leonard.
Interesting.
And it's here that the legend of the Fiji mermaid comes back up.
Okay.
With Scully calling it the humbug.
Right.
That the episode's named after.
The introduction of Lanny and Leonard is really key, I think, because it changes how we understand the weirdness in this episode.
Yeah.
The idea of a parasitic twin that can act on its own is definitely strange, even for the X-Files. And that Fiji mermaid legend coming back, it's like a clever distraction. It plays on Mulder's fascination with the outrageous, while this, more disturbing but still strange reality is taking shape.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
And then the mystery takes an even darker turn.
Okay.
Another attack happens.
Right.
Mr. Nutt becomes a victim, and we find out just how bizarre the attacker really is.
Okay.
It's Leonard.
Oh, what?
Lanny's parasitic twin.
Right.
And incredibly, he can separate himself from Lanny's body.
Right.
The motivation, as Lanny explains it, is really disturbing.
Yeah.
Leonard's looking for a new brother.
Wow.
Because Lanny's health is failing.
This revelation about Leonard, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, is it just basic survival that's driving these violent acts?
Right.
Or, is there something more aware going on?
Yeah.
Lanny's interpretation adds this layer of tragedy and this unsettling sense of a twisted, family need that's fueling the horror.
Yeah, it's intense. So Lanny, to try and contain his, deadly twin, he locks himself up in jail.
Okay.
But the summary tells us this doesn't work.
Right.
Lanny dies, and Leonard manages to get away.
Oh, wow.
And what follows is a chase into this circus funhouse.
Oh, that's perfect.
That setting, I think, really emphasizes the episode's unsettling and surreal atmosphere.
Oh, absolutely. That funhouse setting is so masterful.
Yeah.
It creates this disorienting, claustrophobic environment full of illusions, like the perfect hunting ground for a creature like Leonard.
Yeah.
And the fact that Mulder and Scully, they chase him in this chaotic place, but they can't catch him.
Right.
It just adds to the feeling that something truly unnatural is going on.
But the story doesn't end there. When Mulder and Scully come out of the funhouse, they find the conundrum outside.
Okay.
His stomach is visibly bigger.
Wow.
He's got this kind of knowing smile on his face.
Oh my God.
The implication, of course, is that he took care of Leonard in his own, particular way.
This is so darkly funny. It leaves so much to the imagination.
Yeah.
The conundrum's silence throughout the whole episode, it makes this, this visual and his little expression so much more powerful.
Yeah.
It's understated storytelling.
Yeah.
It makes us put together the pieces of Leonard's, apparent demise.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
So the official investigation goes on.
Yeah.
And Sheriff Jim, in this super sarcastic moment, asks Scully about what she thinks about the Fiji mermaid theory now.
Right.
And Mulder makes this, wry observation that now Scully's experiencing this skepticism he always faces.
Right.
And I think that adds this great layer of meta-commentary.
It really shows us the dynamic between Mulder and Scully where, they're always switching between believing and not believing.
Right, yeah.
And it also emphasizes that whole idea of humbug, deception, and how hard it is to tell what's true and what's fake.
Right.
Which is all over this episode.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So as things seem to be wrapping up, we've got this really memorable conversation with Dr. Blockhead.
Oh, yeah.
As he's getting ready to leave with a, clearly not well conundrum. He gives this kind of profound speech.
Oh.
He's sad about a future where science might get rid of genetic differences.
Wow.
And he says that, quote unquote, self-made freaks are needed to remind society that, nature hates normality.
Yeah.
It's quite a statement.
Dr. Blockhead's perspective is so important, I think, for understanding the deeper meaning of this episode.
Yeah.
He challenges us to rethink what we see as beautiful or normal and suggests that there's value in being different and being an outsider. His comment to Mulder is especially interesting. He's making this, seemingly ordinary FBI agent into a symbol of a potentially boring and sterile future.
And then we have this absolutely unforgettable last moment of the main story.
Okay.
Mulder asks about the conundrum's, clearly uncomfortable condition.
Yeah.
And the conundrum, who's been silent this whole time, speaks for the first and only time.
Wow.
And he says, probably something I ate.
Oh my gosh.
With that, knowing smile.
Wow.
It's such a darkly comedic and just bizarre way to end this part of the episode.
The conundrum's one line really sums up the episode's weird tone.
Yeah.
It leaves us feeling unsettled and like things aren't resolved.
Right.
Which fits perfectly with all the strange events we've seen. And Mulder and Scully's reaction, as Dr. Blockhead drives away with the conundrum, it just shows how truly unique their experience in Gibsonton was.
So this humbug that you've just explored, it wasn't just another case for Mulder and Scully.
Right.
What we know shows us that this episode is kind of special in the history of the X-Files.
Oh, really?
It was the first episode to intentionally have a lot of comedy in it. A real shift from the show's usual tone.
Yeah.
And apparently it caused some, interesting discussions behind the scenes.
Oh, wow.
Some of the crew felt like something, really new was happening.
Right.
Even some of the more obviously funny parts were, carefully considered.
Yeah.
It shows this fascinating creative tension.
Yeah.
Like they were going into uncharted territory for the series.
What's really interesting here, I think, is that they were aware of this tonal shift even while making the episode.
Yeah.
The fact that the comedy was intentional and even debated shows how risky it was to change from what made the show successful.
Yeah.
It really says a lot about the writers and producers being brave enough to experiment and push the limits of what the X-Files could be.
And the writer of this wonderfully bizarre story, Darren Morgan.
Yes.
He had this really unique, almost mystical connection to the show.
Right.
Even before writing Humbug.
Yeah.
Our sources tell us that he actually became one of the show's most memorable creatures.
Really?
The unforgettable Flukeman.
Oh, wow.
From that earlier episode, the host. Can you imagine the stories that costume could tell?
Right.
The unique perspective it gave on the X-Files.
Yeah.
At least from inside its slimy embrace.
Wow.
Maybe that experience, literally being the monster, made him want to shape the story from behind the camera.
That's so interesting.
And there's even this subtle, almost ghostly nod to this.
Okay.
You can see the Flukeman costume itself hidden in Hepcat Helms' studio.
No way.
Did you, our listener, catch that little almost secret detail?
That's amazing.
It adds to the episode's mysterious charm.
It really makes you think, experiencing the show from such a strange point of view could have really influenced how Morgan told stories.
Right.
Maybe it gave him this, special appreciation for the strange, the people who are pushed to the edges of society, and the darkly funny, and that subtle visual reference to the fluke man, like a secret handshake for the people who really watch the show.
Yeah.
A connection to his time as a performer in the show's world to now being the one creating these uncanny stories.
And even though the humid, sunny Florida setting is so important to the story's atmosphere, it was actually filmed somewhere completely different.
Oh, wow.
Almost like a carefully made illusion.
Okay.
Picture this White Rock, British Columbia, in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
The air would have been freezing cold.
Right.
But the magic of filmmaking, required a total transformation. They had to clear all the snow and carefully put things on the set to make it look warm and sunny, like Florida.
That's incredible.
It's like a hidden world built against the odds.
Yeah.
And I think it reminds us of the power of cinematic illusions.
This behind-the-scenes detail really shows the dedication and the artistry that went into creating the world of the X-Files.
Right.
That contrast between the, freezing filming conditions and the final sunny look on screen.
Yeah.
It emphasizes how artificial the reality we see can be, which fits perfectly with how the episode explores outward appearances and the weird things hidden underneath.
And Humbug also gets this extra layer of peculiar charm.
Okay.
Because they decided to include people whose lives were, in many ways, stranger than fiction. Real-life sideshow performers.
Yeah.
Jim Rose and the Enigma.
Wow.
They weren't just acting.
Right.
They brought their own real experiences, their very beings to the story.
Right.
Think about the Enigma willingly going into a freezing river for a scene.
Really?
Without anything to protect him from the cold.
Yeah.
What stories are hidden under those tattoos?
Right.
What incredible dedication made him do that?
Yeah.
Their presence makes the episode feel so authentic.
Right.
It blurs the line between fiction and reality in a way that only the X-Files could.
Their involvement adds this whole other level to the episode, doesn't it?
Yeah.
By using real sideshow performers.
Yeah.
The show not only makes it feel more real, but also makes those themes of being different, being accepted, and questioning societal norms even stronger.
Right.
The Enigma being willing to be so uncomfortable for a scene.
Yeah.
It really shows how dedicated he is to his art,
Yeah.
and maybe a connection to the episode's message of embracing the unusual.
And lastly, there's this small, almost unbelievable story from the set.
Oh, okay.
During a scene where Scully was supposed to just pretend to eat a cricket.
Right.
The actress Gillian Anderson chose to do something different.
Really?
Instead of pretending she actually ate the insect.
Oh, wow.
It was this moment of such unexpected commitment.
Yeah.
This little act that really shows how dedicated they were to bringing this strange world to life.
Yeah.
Humbug wasn't just a story.
Yeah.
As our sources say, it was a collection of these strange and fascinating moments, both on and off camera, that subtly helped to shape the show going forward, proving it could be so much more than just paranormal stories.
That story really captures the spirit of Humbug.
Yep.
That willingness to do the unexpected and go beyond the usual way of telling stories.
Yeah.
Anderson's decision, even though it seems small, reflects a bigger commitment to being authentic.
Yeah.
And to the episode's wonderfully offbeat nature.
Right.
It's these surprising, almost hard-to-believe moments, both on and off screen, that make this deep dive so appealing and unique.
So as you can see now, our deep dive into Humbug shows us a story full of weirdness. And makes us really think about how we define normal.
Yeah.
The episode itself was a big moment for the X-Files. It showed how well the show could blend real creepiness with a really effective and darkly funny feel.
Think about Dr. Blockhead's predictions about the future and the conundrum's mysterious last words. What could they mean? Are they just there to make us laugh, or do they say something deeper about how society changes and the mysteries of being human? And how does this exploration of otherness, which is so important to Humbug, connect to how we see and treat people who are different from us today?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It is.
This Humbug,
Yeah.
this seemingly simple investigation into a truly bizarre murder ends up showing us layers of insightful commentary.
Right.
And introduces us to these really unforgettable characters.
It does.
We hope this exploration has given you a better understanding of this really unique episode.
Yes.
And maybe sparked an interest to watch it again.
Right.
Looking for those hidden layers and subtle humbugs yourself.
Yeah.
As always, the deep dive continues
Yes.
in your own thoughts and what you discover.
I like that.